Namaskar. My name is Satmakananda. I will ask my voice assistant to present this introduction.
Namaskar. I am the voice assistant to help get through long readings and comments. The title is Microvita in Practice. How entities smaller and subtler than atoms are applied in different fields, particularly in collective life. It's a quite daring title to show the application of Microvita. In 1988, when I read Microvita in Nutshell, sitting on the train between Bombay to Calcutta, the subject was interesting, but I was not able to relate to this new knowledge. Also, in those years, Microvita lost, to some extent, its appeal, when hearing about water experiments, strange and irrational stories. A few of our members did not give up. They continue to study and do research, as per Baba's urgent request. They published books and papers, which gave an interesting insight, as well as what it does and does not. The collection of the published books may not have been noticed by many, including me. Only, in last May, when Raymond Bhattacharya posted his latest book on our mailing list, I downloaded his file, for the sake of respect. Same that I did before with other authors. After reading the first chapters, I was hooked on this subject. I downloaded Hans Joachim Rudolph's book, and the other authors. Fascinating, when laying out selected quotes in one place. Seeing that the authors have many things in common, regardless if then presented from an atomic or social, or medical or cosmological perspective. I applied a mind mapping technique. Microvita came alive. Same as I felt about sociology, though later I lost interest in this science, because of assumptions and often materialistic views. I did a basic study in the mid-80s. It is a science that studies the development and functioning of a society. The interesting part, that Microvita makes a match with many scientific fields, fills the missing part that has been unknown and speculated before. In this presentation, I will not go in details, but to show what our Microvita authors have written, a few relevant social statistics, and my personal observations. I hope this presentation will awaken new questions about Microvita, the mental world, which includes the animals and plants. A new way of thinking given by Baba in 1986.
Yes, the title is Microvita in Practice. This quote awakened my interest. I was taken by the simplicity of Baba's example.
Baba viewed the universe differently. He was not an astrophysicist, but yet, he could describe the inner working of the entire universe, down to the smallest detail. He was not a nuclear physicist, but yet, he knew the inner quantum mechanics of an atom. Yet, the discourses of Microvita that he gave were within the scope of people to understand, and how it applies in the life, within certain conditions.
So here what Baba emphasized, that the research to develop Microvita must be started immediately, so that many of the current problems facing humanity can be solved.
Microvita, singular of Microvita, is the inner secret of life, inner secret of vital progress, in all the fields of physicality, psyche, and spirituality. The entire world is waiting for you to bring all-round metamorphosis.
And as I said here just earlier, that recently what attracted me.
Microvita is not as some super-intelligent, godlike being, but as consciousness within every object in our universe. Also, not as a giant mind that allocates different minute portions for each being's needs, but evolves and adapts in every object in our relative universe of cause and effects. Science has still not shown human beings how to live in harmony with themselves, their fellow human beings, animals, plants, and the physical world. The result is frustration, dissatisfaction, and lack of meaning in the lives of many people.
Also, not to simplify by going down the rabbit hole indicated in these introductions, but to bring up real answers which has been there all along, today as well as in your childhood. My first big question, which I now can relate to Microvita, as well as the other question what I will present here in this presentation. It was in 1981. I was LFT in Stockholm, and I found one old newspaper clip in the drawer.
In 1968, the most talked event in Sweden, the organized student riots in Stockholm. 1,500 students rioted and tried to occupy the covered house, the central railway station, and the parliament, after occupying the student union building. The students were inspired by the protests of May 1968 in France, but used less violence. This was one of many political protests in Europe. This event is not the focus, but what happened a few months later.
That few months later, in that same year of 1968, parents and teachers of much younger students did not accept the truth when their sons and daughters did the riot. And there in that article there was mentioned about that some parents were just mentioning that my son will never riot because of the insignificant announcement. And that insignificant announcement, because it happened during the 3-month school summer holidays. The announcement of the Ministry of Education declared that the schools will start 2 weeks earlier than usual. Those young students went on the street. Something unbelievable. We're speaking about 1968. In 1986 in Tokyo, one kindergarten teacher demonstrated to Dada Chaitanyananda. He's from France. She called the children to sit in one circle. From one box, she grabbed a handful of sticks, threw them on the floor in front of the children, and asked, "How many are there?" Dada started to point with his finger and try to separate each stick and mentally trying to count. Did it take long when he was stopped, when the children called out the correct number?
Dada, were the children able to do the same performance at their homes? Or only when they are together?
I don't think so. Parents' traditional mindset would not allow, without splitting the sticks as Dada was trying to do, but to let the mind collectively with their child look at the sticks as they are on the floor, thereby seeing the number together. So that was one of those what start to bring me into the line what I'm presenting here. And of course,
it is seen that if the collective body of a particular nature of the living beings, or expressions, do not like it, the collective, controlling faculty, creates a sort of change, and metamorphosis, in the physical structure, and as a result, the nature of the longings, also changes.
About the pre-giraffes, because in those early days, but they was forced by the environmental circumstances to migrate to area where the food was available on the tall trees. And when you have that food up in the high trees and the hunger, there is tremendous dissatisfactions.
Due to dissatisfaction of the members of the species, and with the approval of the macrocosmic carnation, their collective controlling faculty began the process of metamorphosizing, a new longing which affected the physical structure. Each species, collectively, willed the physical structure of the individual members to adapt to its environment. For new changes to take place, different propensities evolved. New glands and subglands for the creatures to express and behave as per the situations required to stay alive.
Did you may have noticed, if you speak more than one language, when you cross a country border? 2 years ago in Madukarona, few monkeys asked me, Dada, have you noticed when you cross the borderline that your language of thoughts is changing? Not after a while, inside the country, but at the borderline itself. I was surprised. How did they know? My experience in 1991, when I crossed the Singapore-Malaysia border by foot. Really I did it, but used the bus. Also, I would not have noticed if I had not been working in Indonesia, where I learned the language. Bahasa Indonesia and Malayu is very similar. At the country border, where you see the red-black stripe I have marked, I stopped when the language changed. 2 months later, I used my stones to scratch one mark on the ground. Maybe the mark is still there. The question, what changed the thoughts? You don't see a wall or door, but definitely something real and concrete. Something interesting to be added when you visit a foreign country. Standing in the middle of a crowded market, your eyes are pinpointed on your country fellows. They are same dress, same behaviors like everybody else there, and too far to hear the language. You just know. How is possible? This I copied from one of the thread from the mailing list discussions. And it's quite common that to solve the racism and discrimination is that human society is one and indivisible. And then we emphasize it is the need of the hour. Are we ready for it? A few times, I think this was given by Achyutananda. The success of the movement will depend in part on as you think, so you become. Yes, we are familiar with that phrase.
Please, I will read this statistics. This is interesting. Over the last few decades, life expectancy has drastically increased around the globe, and people became taller. The average person, born in 1960 could expect to live to 52 years of age. Today, the average is 72. The average height of men, around the world, increased by 5%. South Korean women saw the largest relative increase of 15%. Tuvalu women increased by less than 1%.
And if you look on the graph, it's very small. It only starts there in 1960. Before that, there's just a straight line, same age line for hundreds of years before. The men became 5% taller than before. And something quite amazing, South Korean women saw the largest relative increase of 15%. But on the other hand, the Tuvalu women, I think that is in the Pacific Ocean, increased less than 1%. So something this has to do according to the place where the people are and the circumstances.
I always wanted to know why the South Korean women suddenly become tall compared to other women around the world. A few months ago, I read in Korea Herald One young girl wrote, "I am a 12-year-old girl, and 158 centimeters tall. All my best friends are at least 160 centimeters in height. My goal is to eventually reach 180 centimeters. Please advise how I can grow taller."
Indeed, interesting. It is said, because of better nutritious food and medical care. Some truth is there. But the same care has been given to domestic animals too. The dogs, cats, and horses have often better food than we humans. Looking at the statistics of domestic animals, the life expectancy and size have remained the same forever. Dogs live to 12, horses to 27, and cattle to 20 years. What is the difference between human beings and animals? Is it because humans have desires and longings to live longer and to become taller? The animals don't, until there is a strong dissatisfaction. As you think, you become. Not wishful thinking, but when there is an underlying dissatisfaction. This is the want of the individual structure. And in the case of collective structures, regarding these psychophysical longings, if it is seen that the collective body of a particular nature, of living being or expression does not like it, then the controlling faculty creates a sort of change and metamorphosis. 4 dimensions of micropsychic longing.
And before going into more details, so I want to just introduce here Margis, what they had to say, who published different books and papers about Microvita. Before I continue, I will ask Didi Anandamurti to show the video clip of Microvita Research Institute. And Margis, they have made a tremendous effort, and in this Microvita Research Institute, they have compiled the materials. They have these meetings and conferences to bring this subject alight and having the discussion on how to bring it into the public. So I will continue the presentation. So from here, continue what have the Margis said and published in these books. Here about Manohar.
According to Barber, billions of these microvita constitute a single carbon atom, and although they are so small, they have lifelike qualities that allow living cells to get organized. Once started, life continues to be influenced by these entities, either in a positive or a negative way.
The word was not ready in those early days. Here Tori has described.
The world was not ready, in those early years, to comprehend concepts like intelligently designed, algorithmically pre-programmed, point-like living entities that had collective minds and carried quantum energy particles to create atoms and maintain our universe. Baba explained how Microvita acted like a regulating and controlling element within our biological world. And to few workers, in closed door. He explained the role of Microvita in the overall creation and maintenance of the universe. Negative Microvita are attracted to persons of selfish mentality, and these negative Microvita intensify destructive and divisive activities of the mind, such as imperialism in its many forms. The psychology of slavery, pseudo-culture, psychoeconomic exploitation, nihilism, and cynicism. These are different negative types of Microvita structures. In order to stop the negative effects of psychology, neo-ethics will have to be adopted. This requires that the macrocosmic entity be accepted as the supreme desideratum in human life. There should be a happy adjustment and balanced blending between the different carbonic and non-carbonic objects desired by the mind.
This is interesting. In terms of uniting the world under one common outlook, religions have not been able to bring humanity together, rather, they divided them into so many groups and castes. Macrocosmic entity, it was mentioned earlier, that the Microvita is not a god-like, but an entity that everyone can relate to, both individually and collectively without philosophical or religious conflicts.
And here something what many of you may be interested by Michael Tausi.
Proposal that humans can develop another mode of knowing, a power of conceiving, is the most radical component of Microvita theory. Sheldrake, Laszlo, Bohm and others have proposed the existence of hidden fields that structures the universe. But Baba ties his theory and the future of science to a new cognitive faculty. Furthermore, he describes the means to obtain it. Unusual psychic abilities are common in science fiction. But for examples, in the real world, we can best turn to indigenous societies. They have a profound and deeply rooted sense of place and relationship with the entirety of the natural world.
All this is of interest because it offers insight into the dynamics of the mental world.
Interesting, such as an idea, which arouses in our mind. It is a structure of subtle Microvita. Either the structure is of a new thought, samskara, or corresponding propensity. Here, Tosi is saying that there are structures that arouse the propensity to accumulate more and more wealth, and structures that arouse the propensity to cultivate the fine arts, and so on. When people get detached from non-carbonic pabula, and become increasingly engrossed in carbonic pabula, there are two ill effects, as a consequence. First, the arena of one's own carbonic pabula will increase and the mind will gradually and steadily drift towards crude matter. Secondly, one's mind will think in terms of devouring others' carbonic pabula.
One consequence is that it leads to a spiritual crudification. The emphasis on food sustained by atoms lead to crudification of the mind. And moreover, tendency of our mind to seize and devour the atomic sustained food of others as well.
To illustrate the physiological hunger, but also the hunger for power or money and property. The other case deals with non-carbonic pabula, food not based on atoms. Hunger, or a thirst for ideals. Those who throughout their lives endlessly search for truth, beauty or justice. Within a healthy human being, there are equal numbers of positive and negative microota, but they are not distributed uniformly. The ratio of positive to negative microota differs throughout the body. While the natural tendency of positive microota is to move upwards, and of negative microota to move downwards, nevertheless, there is the possibility for both kinds of microota to circulate around the entire human structure. Also, Rudolph is saying that the human body is subject to a continual flux of tanmatras and microota, over which humans have little control. These might come from extraterrestrial sources, in particular, the sun and stars. Although humans cannot control the flux of such microota through their bodies and environment, they can have control over the microota that will be incorporated into their physical and psychic body. Those who believe that consciousness is in everything in our universe simply assume that consciousness is similar in all beings and all parts. That is not true. The truth is, consciousness is within every structure, within our cosmology, including within us. But it is not the same everywhere. Like all things in our universe, it changes, and it is constantly moving. It was not until Baba introduced microota did we see the differences in consciousness structures.
Here we have some general classes of mental structure. Unit consciousness structure. Example are you, me, plants, and general everything we see and experience. Collective consciousness structure, microvitum and endoplasm. It's a microvitic mental structure. Macrocosmic consciousness structure. They are involved in creating and maintaining the cosmos. This is how it looks like. There are individual collective mindsets. Example, when you look there on the front, where all the audience are looking towards, those are the members who is presenting this performance, what they have there. They are creating a collective mind amongst themselves. They may even have maybe some mission or maybe have some beliefs, what is bringing them together. But there they are formed as microvital structure. And amongst the audience, yes, there are those individual mindsets. You are never alone and helpless. I think many of you remember this song. I think it was maybe 1969. Baba introduced the concept about Hatha Yoga and Prata Yoga.
Before Microvita theory was introduced in 1986, the individual and collective relationship with the Supreme Consciousness was within a philosophical concept. The Microvita relationship is objective. For example, that microvita are not only collective, but they grow in scope, and as an overall Prata Yoga control and coordination with the cosmic mind. Microvita coordinates the overall endoplasmic structure for the benefit of the greater being. This relationship is called Hatha Yoga. In Baba's yoga psychology, for example of the pre-giraffe, there was required approval from the microcosmic conation. The microvita allows changes only in specific circumstances. When the environment is congenial to the change. When it is not opposed to the basic desires of the macrocosmic mind. Lastly, the coagulating basic mind stuff must have a base. There must be a strong dissatisfaction for a new longing to evolve.
Microvita in practice. Obsession and social discrimination associated with tallness are everywhere. With tallness, it is considered a social advantage. This desire created a niche market for growth hormones and nutrition supplements. but does not have a permanent effect, without enormous collective distress. In South Korea, people's fixation with height came under the spotlight in 2009, when a female university student commented that any man shorter than 180 centimeters is a loser.
When we look at different groups, there is a defined specific trend of thoughts and behavior. Please, look at the pictures. In Romania, not the social issues, but the common physical and mental block that homeless and runaway youth collectively created. How the 3,000 youth were able to survive on the dangerous and life-threatening streets. They collectively suppressed the natural growth from youth to men. A child in vulnerable-looking appearance had a much better advantage to survive than a grown-up.
The Himba people, in southwest Africa. They can see fine details, and ignore distraction, much better than most other human beings. A finding that may reflect the many ways that modern life is changing our minds and abilities. The ethnic group of Romi. They have the same ability to concentrate on fine details. They don't miss any details that modern people are often missing with a diffused mindset. The advantage, the Romani children, in the UK and Italy, many of them have better school exam results than average school children of the same age. Throughout history, the Romis were often killed on sight, especially by the Einsatzgruppen on the Eastern Front. 25% of European Roma perished in the genocide. They have the ability to survive. Today, many of them have a strong ground and influence on the social field.
By looking at what Barber said before, and comparing it to what he showed as the new concepts of Microvita, could we understand to look at the other proprietary direction that we need to evolve towards? That we are not alone. Barber opened the path to understanding collective minds, to our individualistically directed unit selves.
A new line of thinking, a new philosophical approach. The reality in our life, individual and collective.